Beaute Bar has been on a roll with the releases, and now they're putting out the Unoriginal Nudes palette, which is a fully neutral palette. So I'm going to be doing some detailed swatches of this for you and also comparing it to some similar things in the brand's lineup. Then I'll do a look with the palette, and at the end, I'll give you my detailed thoughts on it. Also, hi, my name is Noopur and I love indie makeup and all things color and sparkle, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a like, especially if you find it helpful or entertaining or whatever. And also, please do subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. And I would really love it if you could comment down below with what your favorite neutral palette is and why, because I feel like everyone has different preferences and that really, determines what your favorite neutral palette is. Before we get too far into the video, I just want to disclose that I did receive this palette to do some swatches for the brand, so you will be able to see that on launch day, and I'm also an affiliate with the brand. My code is just Nuopur. No pressure to use it, of course, but it will help you save a little bit on the palette, and since it's affiliated, I will get a small commission, so thank you so much if you use it. It really does help me out, and it also tells the brand that you value my content. So per usual, let me give you the launch details before I move into the swatches. This is launching on Friday, June 27th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it will retail for $69, which is pricey, of course, but it's actually a little less than the brand's other 20 pan palettes. Their other 20 pans like Smoky Glam, Ocean Jewel, and Poison Garden all retail for $75. And I suspect that the reason that this one is slightly less is because there aren't as many multichromes or like shifty shadows in the palette, but there are still special shadow, so that is why the cost is overall still on the higher side. And of course, using a code will bring that price down. Any code, not just mine, but I don't say that to try to like sway you to purchase the palette. My goal with these types of videos is simply to give you like a well-rounded idea of what the palette is like so that you can make an informed purchase decision if that's what you want. And that's all I have to say, so let's get into the swatches. Here's the cover. It is very much Mean Girls burn book inspired and has a bunch of fun text in reference to that. Then here's the inside. It is magnetic with 12 mattes and 8 shimmers in a variety of textures and finishes. I want to note that 4 of the shimmers have the same texture of sparkles as in Skin of a Killer from the Vamp palette, which is also from Beaute Bar. Here are my photo swatches so you can see the entire color story all at once as well as any shifts. I like to show my photo swatches just so that you can see all the shadows in a different setting. Here are all of the mattes together. The formula is the usual good Beaute Bar formula that I love. I had no problem working with it. It's very creamy and pigmented, easy to both build and blend. Token Shimmer 1 is the first Skin of a Killer sibling with those same icy white silver dazzling sparkles, but on a sheer warm vanilla base. There are also tiny micro pinpricks of red-orange sparkles. Overall, it has a small particle size. Token Shimmer 2 is the second Skin of a Killer sibling with icy sparkles on a cool pink base and with purpley pink sparkles mixed in as well. It also has a small particle size. Replicate is more of a standard shimmer with a pigmented cool gray base and silver sparkles. This one has some texture to it and it feels a little gritty but can be smoothed out when applied. Mimic is another standard shimmer with a pigmented warm bronze base and dazzling gold sparkles. The formula is similar to the previous shimmer Replicate, but this one is slightly more sparkly. Echo is the third Skin of a Killer sibling with those same icy white sparkles, but they are mixed into a satin chocolate brown base, resulting in a unique dimensional finish. It is very smooth overall. Ignorance is Bliss is a pure holographic shade. I feel like the hollow particles are 2 different sizes, but they blend together well. It can be a little chunky when picked up, but you can smooth it out when applying it. Token Shimmer 3 is the fourth and final Skin of a Killer sibling. It has those icy sparkles mixed in with a very muted blue base and also muted shifts that go pink, gold, green. Oblivious has a light gray taupe base with silver and blue sparkles that give a slight dimensional finish. It shifts to more of a pink gold at an angle. The particle size is pretty small, but it is still very sparkly. I'm going to start doing comparisons now, and quick note that this is only my second time doing overhead comparisons like this, and I'm still working out the lighting and stuff. I changed a couple of things from last time, so I'm going to see how it looks this time. I apologize if things are a little iffy, but hopefully this is helpful. So the first comparison I wanted to do was Unoriginal Nudes to Melted Mattes, because I feel like after this palette, this is the most neutral leaning one in Beaute Bar's lineup. Of course, minus these 2 rows of neon mattes, which we're going to ignore. And of course, Melted Mattes does not have any shimmers, so I did some swatches comparing all of the mattes between the palettes. They are a little out of order, sorry, but Melted Mattes is on this side and Unoriginal Nudes is on this side, and that's the format I will follow for all the comparisons. So you can make the call as to
how many similar shades there are between the two, if any. But what I will say is that Melted Mattes is overall a lot warmer than Unoriginal Nudes, which I feel like has more true neutral leaning shades within the palette. Next up, I have Unoriginal Nudes next to Smoky Glam, which I feel like overall are different vibes, you know, because this is like a true neutral palette and this one has more like mauve tones and like grayish shades down here. But I did do some swatches and I want to talk about the mattes first. This time I only swatched the shades that could potentially be similar between the two palettes because I didn't feel like it made sense to do like these warm shades or like this super bright pink or like the berry shades in this palette, you know? So I think that like maybe these two like mauve shades are similar and these two could probably translate a little similarly on the eye, but it depends on your undertone because this one definitely has more like a touch more purple in it, you know? Between the grays, this one is lighter than this one. I don't know how well that's showing up on camera. And between these two shades, I swatched them next to each other, but this is a true black versus this is a charcoal. Now for the shimmers, ignore this streak over here. That's an accident. But I feel like, again, the palettes are pretty different because this side, there are a lot of like shifty shades and like special multicolored sparkle shades. I feel like there's less of that in this palette, but I did swatch the one shifty shade over here. This one is the one with multicolored sparkles, and this is the pink-based like Skin of a Killer type shadow, and I really don't feel like there's anything too similar between the two palettes. Now I just kind of want to show you the original Smoky Glam next to Unoriginal Nudes, and I didn't actually really swatch much of this palette because all of the mattes in the new Smoky Glam are identical. They're pulled directly from here, and there are just like a few additional ones in here, and I don't think that like the additional mattes in this palette have any overlap with this palette. The one thing that I did swatch was I swatched this Shimmer Romantic next to Token Shimmer 1 right here on my hand because it's one of those like icy silver shades, but I don't think that they're similar because the formulas are very different. Like this is just like a standard metallic shimmer and this is that special like Skin of a Killer type of formula. And you can see when I move my hand away from the light, this has like a very prominent base and this is like essentially baseless, and they're just very different in the way that they sparkle. So I just wanted to show you that. Speaking of Skin of a Killer, I wanted to show you what all 4 of the sibling shades from this palette looked like against the original Skin of a Killer eyeshadow, but also the Skin of a Killer highlighter, because in my opinion, these two are slightly different. The eyeshadow to me has the tiniest amount more texture, which causes it to sparkle in like an extra diamond-like way, whereas the highlighter has a finer particle size, and it does make more sense as a highlighter in my opinion, whereas this one works better as an eyeshadow. And I feel like this can be like sheared out in a more piecey way to make like a better topper, if that makes sense. But I prefer this with the smaller particle size for my inner corner. So like, I like them both, but just in different ways. And I swatched them over here. The highlighter is up top and the eyeshadow is at the bottom, and I really don't know how obvious it's going to be on camera. Probably not, because it's really an in-person thing, but maybe you can see that this is like a different kind of sparkle. And then here are the 4 sibling shades next to the originals, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So this one up top is supposed to be like a warm vanilla version of these two, but I feel like it has the same icy silver sparkles and the base is so sheer you can't really see it, and then it has like little orange-red specks throughout. This one does feel different to me because it's more pinky overall. This one to me is very different because it's got those icy silver sparkles mixed in with a chocolate brown satin base. So it's like, I don't feel like it's like similar at all, but I can see why it's called a sibling shade. But this one down here, like, I am not entirely sure why it's called a sibling shade because I feel like it's super different. It's got like a blue, like a very washed out blue base with like sparkles that shift from pink to gold to green mixed in. So it has like a multicolored sparkle effect. And yes, it is quite as sparkly as these two shades, but I just feel like it's not similar at all. It's actually quite different, which is a good thing. The last thing that I want to show you is this shade, Ignorance is Bliss, which is supposed to be a pure holographic shade next to their single shadow Just Hollow, which I don't even think that this is available now. It was launched like holiday time of 2023, but I use this shade all the time as like a hollow topper, and I was really excited to see Ignorance is Bliss as like a palette alternative to it. So I did swatch them side by side over here. Quite honestly, they are incredibly similar. I would say that, like, obviously, like, color-wise, they are the same thing, but I much prefer the formula of Ignorance is Bliss. I just feel like Just Hollow is a little harder to work with in my experience, and I'm glad to see just like a more elegant formula.
So I actually know exactly what I want to do with this palette, and it is going to be a bit more on the simple side. I'm not saying that I'm only going to use like 3 shades, but it's going to be simple for me because this is a neutral palette after all, and I'm not saying that neutral palettes can only be used to do simple looks. You can absolutely use them to do something more like complex, but for me, the way in which I use neutral palettes is typically for like more effortless looks where I just want to feel pretty and put together, and I just want to use this palette in a way that feels authentic to me. I'm going to start by dipping into this shade over here. I'm going to be running this throughout my entire crease, and you can see that I've already done this eye, so this shadow can definitely be built up, and I'm going to be doing that, but I also wanted to show you what it looks like as like just a really light wash, because I only did 1 dip in the pan and I kind of tapped my brush off so there wasn't a ton of pigment left on my brush, and now after doing a soft blend, that is what it looks like. So it's a bit like softer, but I definitely am doing a bit of a, I don't want to say like a super smoky look. Well, I say that now, it might end up smoky, but like I don't want it to be like too smoky. So I don't know. I'm just going for this level of pigment. Dipped in one more time, and this time I'm really trying to wedge it in that deepest part of my crease first and over here on the outer part, then slowly start blending it. Per usual, I am having no issues, blending or building these eyeshadows. I always say this, but Beaute Bar makes one of my favorite matte formulas. They're just so easy to work with. And especially neutrals, I feel like neutrals are very, I don't want to say easy to formulate, because some people actually feel the opposite. I feel like some people think that neutrals are harder to work with for whatever reason, but I think that they are easier. Also doing a quick wash of this under my lower lash line. This matte has kind of a rosy taupe undertone to it, which I really like. Now I'm going to use the deepest brown matte, this one over here. This matte actually had quite a bit of kick up in the pan, which I want to note because that is slightly unusual for Beaute Bar. I feel like their shadows aren't usually that powdery, so I'm going to make sure to tap off my brush really well so I don't get fallout. I'm going to be packing this on the outer corner like this at an angle first, and then wiping off my brush so that the pigment doesn't get out of control, then slowly starting to blend it out like this. Very, very softly, just little bit by little bit. I love it when brands include super deep dark brown mattes in palettes as opposed to blacks, although there is a black in this palette too, which, does make sense for a neutral palette, but I love using deep dark browns like this to deepen up. I'm also going to soften this edge over here, bring it onto the lid a little bit more, and then slowly blend it with the crease shade. Now I don't usually do this, but I'm actually going to softly dip into this shade to just blend the outer edge of this matte. I'm gonna take it like kind of directly on top of the outermost edge, like not outside of it, just directly on top of it, because this is a very pigmented deep brown matte, and I feel like it could get out of hand easily, and I don't want it to. So because that deep brown matte is super pigmented, I'm going to take just the tiniest amount on this very teeny tiny pencil brush, and I'm going to apply it literally just here. Bring it up into the outer corner like that. And then I'm going to switch to a slightly thicker pencil brush and use that to just bring it in a touch. Now for the lid, I'm going to dip into this shimmer over here called Echo. This shimmer is going to go all over the lid. We are going pretty smoky, I guess. I'm using my finger to get it kind of like on the outer half per usual. I always do this, and then I'm going to switch over to a brush. And now I'm using the brush to get up to my crease in a slightly sheer layer up here. And then same thing as I get to the inner third of my lid, I like to use a brush to put it on slightly sheerly with such dark shades so that it's not too heavy in the inner portion. This shimmer is so interesting because it does have these icy silver sparkles that are the same as the ones in Skin of a Killer, but they are mixed in with this chocolate brown satin base that is not sparkly, really I wouldn't say at all, but it's like, it's a satin, you know? So there's quite a bit of contrast and sparkle level between those two things. And so this shadow is not uniformly sparkly throughout. And it's almost like the silver sparkles are moving in slow motion as you move your head. It's a really cool effect, and you could definitely wear the shadow on its own. But being me, I want even more sparkle, so I'm going to add something on top. I'm actually going to use this shade over here, Ignorance is Bliss, as my topper, and this is a pure hollow pigment, so it is incredibly intense, and you probably could use it all over your eye. Definitely I would use a glitter glue with this because I can see it being like prone to fallout, and if you want it in an even layer, definitely use glitter glue. But since I'm using it as a topper, I'm going to take it on a brush like this and just tap into it like once or twice to get some pigment in. But I want to try to avoid fallout, which I don't think I will be able to avoid entirely. So definitely do your eyes first, I would recommend if you're using this shade, unlike me where I have my base done. But to try to avoid any fallout, I'm going to tap off some on the back of my hand like this, which will also work it a bit more into the bristles. So I've already gone ahead and done this eye off camera, and I just want you to see the difference between my two eyes before I go ahead and apply the hollow on this one. This eye is, first of all, a lot more sparkly, but on camera, I feel like, at least from what I can tell in the viewfinder, it's looking a little bit more like cool toned and gray almost from that hollow pigment, but in person I don't find this to look like super gray. I did actually apply a little bit more hollow than I wanted to, but if I had put less, it probably wouldn't look as cool toned. I'm gonna apply this very carefully with tapping motions and like really working it onto there so that it's not gonna fall off, at least as best as I can. I forgot to mention the other reason that I like tapped the brush on the back of my hand is this eyeshadow can pick up a little bit, I don't want to say like chunky, but I guess yeah, a little bit chunky, and tapping it off on the back of my hand kind of helps even out the pigment, so you're not going to get like big deposits of the hollow, and instead you're going to get a more even dispersed layer. I'm actually shocked how little fallout I got after doing that. Like I do have a few flecks over here, but I feel like that's the normal amount of fallout I get from like most shimmers when I apply them off camera or on camera, because when I apply shimmers off camera, I don't know if I've ever like explicitly mentioned this, but I kind of apply them at an angle like this and tilting down so that it like falls onto my vanity instead of onto my cheeks. But it's kind of impossible for me to do that on camera and also show you like a proper application, so I inevitably end up with fallout. Now for my inner corner, I'm going to dip into this shimmer over here. This is going in the usual places I always put it, so here in the inner corner, as well as dragged over here. Dipped in one more time, and now I'm dragging this up through the swoop to meet the matte in my crease. And with this type of formula, I really like to go back and forth like this so that it's a more dispersed sparkle instead of like built up and more metallic. So I specifically wanted to use this shimmer in my look today because it's supposed to be a more warm vanilla version of Skin of a Killer, which that shadow is more of like an icy white silver sparkle. But this shimmer has those same like icy silver white sparkles mixed in with like a more like red orangey sparkle. That's a smaller particle size. They're really just like micro pinpricks, and I can see them in front of me from a distance. I don't think you'll be able to see them, but I do feel like it makes a shadow a little different theoretically from Skin of a Killer, but I don't think that you realistically need both of them. Here's the final look, and I really, really like how this turned out because I have always wanted a chocolate brown hollow shimmer, because I feel like most of the time we see holochromes, but sometimes I just want like a regular shimmer with hollow in it. Like Beaute Bar does have one in the Secret Garden palette. It's the shade Gazebo, if you're familiar with it. That's like a rose gold hollow shimmer, and I've always wanted one that's a bit more like deeper and sultry. And like this chocolate brown, since the base is satin, it's not like super sparkly all throughout, but I kind of like that almost more even, because then it really allows the hollow to pop. And that's the thing with holochromes, very beautiful and I love them, but sometimes it feels like the hollow is competing for attention with the shifts, and with a straight shimmer with hollow in it, the hollow is more like the standout thing, which
I love. And now it's sparkle cam time so that you can see this hollow a little bit better, hopefully, because I feel like in my other lighting, it just kind of shows up as like a gray silver sparkle, but over here you can definitely see those rainbow flecks. And then I hope that you can also see with the icy sparkle in my inner swoop, there are some of those like warm red-orange flecks dispersed throughout it, but they're very, very tiny. But overall, very happy with this look.
Before we get into my thoughts on the palette, I always like to have my usual disclaimer that this is not a review, especially because I literally got the palette this morning. I swatched it and then I sat down to record this and I've only used it once. So this is very much like my first impressions, but I do like to be as thorough as possible. First, let's talk about the concept / color story of this palette. I do think that it was sorely needed in Beaute Bar's lineup because I don't feel like they have a true neutral palette as you saw in the comparisons. You know, Smoky Glam, both the old and new lean more mauve, and then the older one also has more like green grays. So I wouldn't consider those true like neutrals. And then Melted Mattes is much warmer and has those neons. And so I think like having a true neutral palette with neutral shimmers in it makes a lot of sense for the brand. And to that degree, I really like that we have a lot of true neutral mattes. And yes, we have a couple of like warmer shades over here and this one that leans a bit more pink, but especially with like this one and then these three, which I would consider more like transition mid-tone shades, at least on my skin tone, I like that we have a good variety of undertones while they are still neutral. Because this one over here is a bit more rosy taupe, like you saw. It's the one that I used today. This one I would say is like the ultimate true neutral. It's just a middle of the road brown. And then this one over here is the coolest of all of these. I wouldn't call it necessarily like a true cool tone, but it is the coolest option. So I just like that you have some variety depending on what kind of vibe you're going for that day. And again, I really like that we have like several different deepening up options to pair with those lighter tones that encompass like the entire gambit. You know, you have one that's a bit more warm tone, one that's like a gray, like a charcoal almost, like a super deep dark brown, and then a black for like intense depth or like a liner if you need it. And usually I'm a hater of matte blacks in palettes, but I do always say that I think that they make sense in a neutral palette. What I am still a personal hater of is the beige mattes in every palette. I have no use for these two, so I personally could have done without like one of them, like I understand that some people do need those shades. So if that's you and that's useful for you, of course, disregard what I'm saying. But for me, I would have actually really loved to see like this one swapped out for a lighter gray matte just to kind of go with this shade over here, because I don't feel like you could pair this with some of the other lighter mattes, but it would have been really cool to see a light gray. Also, I totally forgot, but going back to this black matte, I swear that there is the slightest sheen to this matte. When I was swatching it, it didn't feel like it was like a true like absorb all light type of black matte. So I am very curious how this is going to apply to the eyes and whether that means that it'll be easier to control, because the reason that I don't like black mattes is just that they're really hard to work with. They can easily take over an entire look. But typically when mattes aren't flat mattes and they have a little bit of a sheen to them, I find them like easier, like a little bit more, I won't say sheer, but they don't go on as like bam pigment, and they're a little easier to work with and blend. So I'm really curious how this is going to perform on the eyes, and maybe I will have to do a look where I actually use a matte black to deepen up with and not just as a liner. Moving on to the shimmers, they are all very much neutral shimmers, which is expected from a neutral palette, though there is one exception. This one down here, Token Shimmer 3, has a little bit of shiftiness to it. It's like a very desaturated color. It has like a pink to gold to green shift on a very soft blue base, but it's not like overtly colorful, so I feel like it is definitely like very approachable. Like if you're someone who truly only wears neutrals, give this shade a chance. It might surprise you. Aside from the 4 official Skin of a Killer adjacent shades, I feel like this one down here has like a very similar level of sparkle to the other ones because it has a finer particle size, but it has that super intense twinkle to it, and I can definitely see myself getting a lot of use out of this shade. I really, really like it. Aside from all of those shades, I'm really glad that we have some just like regular sparkly metallic shades, this one, and I like that we have a cool toned option and a warm toned option so you can like combine them with the various different mattes. Lastly, I want to talk about this pure hollow shade down here because I feel like it's pretty uncommon even like with other brands. I think Touch of Glam might have one, but I haven't tried theirs, and Bella Beaute Bar also has their single shadow version of it, but I do prefer the formula of this one, so I'm personally happy to see it here. But I don't know if it's going to be everyone's cup of tea because it is an incredibly intense shade, and I feel like people typically think of neutrals as like wearable shades, but to me this is not a super wearable shade, at least if you wear it all over the lid on its own. It is definitely like a statement shadow, and I personally like to use it as a topper shade, but again, I don't know if everyone is going to want to use it in that way, and you definitely have to work with it a little bit because like I said, it is prone to fallout. It can pick up a little like in clumps, and so I feel like you have to baby it a little bit, and I just don't know like how much like the average person is going to reach for something like this. And then I really quickly just want to talk about the branding of this palette. Not so much the cover being like burn book-esque, which is really fun and very obvious, but I more so want to talk about like the labels, like the fact that it's called Unoriginal Nudes, and all of the mattes in the palettes are called Unoriginal Nude 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down. And then some of the shimmers are called Token Shimmer 1, 2, 3, 4. And I feel like that is interesting on the brand's part because to me it reads as the brand is launching this as like a nothing special palette. It feels to me like it was launched as something to fill a gap in their lineup, and I don't feel like they're saying like this is like the next best big thing that you need to buy, which like I feel like that's constantly being shoved down our throats in the makeup world. So it's just like an interesting theme for a palette. That's it for this video. I want to try to keep the outro short because I am just sick of talking, but also I just want to keep the video as short as possible in general. So thank you for watching till the end. Please don't forget to give this video a like before you go, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!